11 student journalists, 10 cities, 8 days, 4 faculty advisors, 2 schools, 2,800 miles and 50 hours of driving, 60 years of history.
The South is not what I thought it was.
Even when you learn about it in school, you still just can't believe that, wow, this actually happened.
I wasn't really expecting to find anything too shocking as far as culture goes. I really just wanted to learn all I could.
It was a thrill to me to learn about African American history and the struggle and how we overcame.
I thought I knew a lot about the South and the civil rights movement. Turns out I don't. But going on this trip, I found it as a way to really put myself out of my comfort zone.
This experience changed and affected me in terms of me being more realistic with myself in the world.
I didn't know what to expect. Part of me thought we were just going on an elaborate vacation with a bunch of cameras and we were just gonna have a good time and hang out and be kids for a while. We were gonna be college students. And then when I got there, I realized how much work there was to be done.
I was able to gain a better understanding through actually experiencing these sites face to face. There's more to the world, and whatever they tell you in books and schools is not all of it. You have to be able to travel to get the fuller picture.
This is something that everyone should experience, whether it be on their own or in a group, with an open mind and with the understanding that their perspective will change, arguably for the better.
Welcome to Montgomery, Alabama, our first stop on the U.S. Civil Rights Trail.
If you choose one place to go on the Civil Rights Trail, you need to go to the Legacy Museum.
My favorite museum is the Legacy Museum. It had a lot of history that I never learned.
You walk in and you step into the Atlantic Ocean. It is explained that the Atlantic Ocean is a grave site that nobody talks about. And I came out of that museum going, I can't go to the Atlantic side of Florida ever again because I will never stop thinking about this.
It really puts everything that happened from slavery to mass incarceration on the singular timeline, rather than that was 1850 and that was 1960 and now it's 2023.
I think they estimated that 1860 was when the last boat carrying slaves reached the U.S. And then standing right next to it was Akiva from FAMU, and on the back of her shirt it said 87, meaning in 1887 FAMU was founded. So there was only a 20-year difference between when the last slave ship arrived in the U.S. and FAMU was founded. And it's just those little things that really shape your perspective.
I spoke with a woman outside of the Legacy Museum.
My name's Sandra McDonald. I'm a journalism student at the University of Florida. We have a big group of us that are we have just gone through the museum, and that's why we wanted to talk to some other people who had gone through. Could I ask you guys about your experience? Have you ever been to this museum before?
No, this is our first time.
Yeah.
This is our first time.
I asked her, as a student who had just gone through, I wanted to talk to her about her experience, and I knew that the Legacy Museum is heavy. It's a very deep, lengthy period of time that you're surrounded by some of the worst atrocities that this country has created against people.
Can you tell me why Black history is so important to your family?
So my daughter's half Black, and I raised her on my own. And I think, I'm gonna try to get this out. I think it was really, for me personally, it was really challenging because I wanted to give her a proper history of her ancestry, but it's impossible to some degree. And so I've always tried to do my best, but it's hard to experience something like that, knowing that my daughter would be treated the same way. And I think it's important that we see ourselves in these moments.
I felt like I was almost intruding upon her emotions, but I knew that that moment was something that we needed to help other people who maybe felt the same way.
Just a mile down the road, we stopped at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice.
The spot that affected me the most was the lynching memorial. Just the bricks hanging from the ceiling to demonstrate somebody being lynched or somebody being hanged really kind of hit me, because it was just so many bricks, and it just showed me that the cruelty that's behind America and what we need to be able to share with the world so that they could see what we saw.
Over the course of this trip, I realized how pertinent and how important and how, I cannot remove myself from civil rights. It makes up the fabric of America. People need to realize that, because no one's going to invite you to go on the civil rights trail. No one's going to be like, these are places you have to go. I think it really is up to an individual to be like, I want to know American history and I want to see it firsthand.
Next stop on the trail, Selma, Alabama.
Hi, I'm WUFT's Jenica Clairvaux, here at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama.
I knew who John Lewis was before we went to Selma. And I knew that he was important. I knew that he had been a very staunch figure in the civil rights movement. When I learned that he was 25 when he led the march and was beaten on Bloody Sunday, it kind of changed my perspective. I walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and I saw the place where he actually took a stand and was beaten by police, and this just terrible things happened to him. And that was the first time that I truly mourned him. Because I had a reason to, because I understood finally the effect of what he had done.
It's often that history repeats itself in many different regurgitated fashions.
The reason we need this history has only grown. Growing up, my middle school and high school experience did not touch on nearly as many events as we witnessed on this trip. And traveling to those places is something that I would highly recommend for anyone to do, just to get a better understanding of our nation's history and partially dark past.
Out of Selma and into Jackson, Mississippi, the home of civil rights activist Medgar Evers.
Fuck, don't give it to you. Fuck, don't give it to you. Saturday night, we in the spot. Don't believe it, just watch.
While on the trip and while preparing for this trip, I feel like I learned about a lot of different things that I had never really even heard about before. This is my first time learning about Medgar Evers. To see his home there in Jackson, Mississippi, and to see the driveway where he was shot and killed on was a moment. It's really hard to describe how someone could kill a person right there, steps away from his wife and steps away from his children. My viewpoints have changed about the South because, like I said, I had the stigma about the South that it was going to be a kind of unsafe, unwelcoming place. Everyone was welcoming. Everyone was willing to answer questions, take photos. I really hope people can understand that, and I really hope people can learn a little bit about our history, because history influences the present.
Welcome to the Mississippi Delta, the birthplace of the blues.
Okay, so my favorite museum was the Delta Blues Museum. One, because I got to talk to Miss May Smith, the curator of the museum, who is absolutely phenomenal, like the nicest woman in the world. She's also worked there for about 27 years, and she was the first African-American female curator of the museum. So, very impressive woman. I just think the way that music is able to create community is just a beautiful thing. I love that you can listen to a song once and have no connection to it, but once you learn something or you've lived an experience or you go through something, you listen to it with a whole new set of ears, and it's amazing. And so going to the Delta Blues Museum was like, oh, I've heard this music before. I've heard it in the car, in my dad's car, but I've never really listened. And I felt like with the context Smith gave me, I was able to really, truly listen, and it was life-changing.
For many across the nation, another sound comes to mind when they think of the Delta, a cry for justice for Emmett Till.
Welcome to Glendora. I'm Johnny B. Thomas, mayor of the town of Glendora. We have worked for 17 years to tell the story of Emmett Till, a young boy that came to Mississippi and while here having too much fun, forgot about what he was doing, and didn't know the way of the South and what would happen or could happen. Made a mistake in having fun.
Always still kind of like wince whenever I hear, you know, about Emmett Till. So seeing that like makeshift, like that recreation of his body, it was just really, it hit me really hard for some reason. I can't even describe it. I think we took a picture like not long after we left that museum, and you can like visibly see that I'm upset. That, it just hit me, but in a different kind of way.
We created this museum to begin the healing. And some say that we are provocative. But in fact, we're not provocative. We are here to create a dialogue and to begin the healing.
Courthouse is symbolic of justice, right? And sitting in this courtroom where the one mission was to achieve justice, and they failed. They didn't achieve justice. These people were acquitted. They weren't held accountable for what they did to Emmett Till. It just really hit me because we're sitting here in 2023 in a completely different position, but 6 years earlier, this site was the site of something that it just was not just. It was not fair.
Emmett Till was found in the Tallahatchie River in 1955. His murderers were acquitted in a trial that lasted about a month. Carolyn Bryant, the 21-year-old woman who accused Emmett of whistling at her, died in April 2023 at age 88.
It really hit home for me. I have a brother. His name is Cam, and he's 14. And he's black. And he's like my heart. He has some physical and mental handicaps that can make him act out sometimes. And he has a hard time understanding. But he's a really good kid. And I just am so afraid for him in the same way that I'm sure Mrs. Till was so afraid for Emmett, you know, because he's a baby. He really is.
2.5 hours west of the Mississippi River, we made our way to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hi, my name is Taylor Meyer, and we're in Little Rock, Arkansas on the Civil Rights Trail. Right now, I'm standing in front of Little Rock Central High School, where the Little Rock Nine once went through those doors. I'm going to introduce you to a few of the people I've met along the way. It was fascinating for me because one of the people that we interviewed had grown up in a family that was not sympathetic to the movement.
My parents came from families that probably weren't that open to integration and to equality of the races, and so it was hard, and it was challenging to grow up in that atmosphere. But I just believe that education is so vital to expanding your horizons and really learning the history of our country.
The other gentleman that we interviewed grew up in a family that was very much talking about what was going on at the time, civil rights. Like, they were obviously sympathetic to the movement.
Federal troops confronting state troops, and the near miss of another civil war that could have happened. It's just amazing that people came through it and that they persevered and didn't give up.
So this was really interesting because here we are in 2023 with a group of people that are traveling together, but seemingly very different backgrounds, and have still come to this point in time that they want to learn our history the same way.
Well, you hope that minds are changed, that anybody who had some residual resentment of this would see how significant it was and why it's worth going through that struggle to get to where we are today.
Sure, our background makes us who we are, but it's also our personal willingness to want to learn.
A big figure in the Little Rock Nine was Elizabeth Eckford, who was one of the black high school students who integrated Little Rock Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. She was one of the students who went to Little Rock Central High there was some sort of miscommunication and she went to the school by herself on a day and she was attacked by a vicious mob. They were throwing things at her. They were saying all these awful things to her.
Being able to walk up the stairs where she had walked in those famous photos and taking a moment to really understand that young people were so central to the civil rights movement.
Our next stop on the Civil Rights Trail, Memphis, Tennessee.
Especially toward the end of the experience, you realize obviously there were a ton of key players in this movement, but Dr. Martin Luther King really was the one that paved the way. And I'm not going to say single-handedly, but I really do think without him, who knows where we would be today. Seeing all the work that he did, and it was extremely emotional for me. They played the March on Washington speech, and for some reason it felt like it was the first time I was hearing it. I sat through the entire thing and did not speak, did not move my head, like just sat there and watched, and it felt like I was there in that moment, taking that in such a pivotal time.
We left Memphis and headed to Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
We're here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, at the University of Alabama, and I'm standing in the schoolhouse door that Vivian Malone and James had walked through to enroll and officially desegregate the University of Alabama.
This day was the most important day potentially in the civil rights movement. Why? Because what President Kennedy does that day and that evening.
Those that were enslaved, they were very talented at crafting bricks, red brick. And then just learning that they pretty much built almost every standing official building in our country. And here at UF, we're surrounded by red brick. So it's just learning how much of everything in our society, can trace back to a time in place where Black people weren't even valued as human.
We're on our way to Birmingham, Alabama, or as it was called back then, Birmingham. All eyes were on Birmingham here at the 16th Street Baptist Church 60 years ago when 4 young girls were killed by a bomb.
In 5th grade was the first time I ever learned about the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing.
Going inside that church where 4 little girls were killed was really astonishing.
I think that, in my mind, Alabama was always that, and visiting and talking to people who were there, or talking to people who have lived in Birmingham and Tuscaloosa and throughout Alabama their entire lives and fought for their rights, was just empowering and inspiring, and knowing that there is good and there is change.
We had the chance to kind of hear from an activist, a leader of that church, who was Kathleen Bunton. She's been volunteering there for about 25 years.
The bombing is what really put us in the limelight. When you say 4 little girls have been killed in a bombing at 16th Street Baptist Church, that gets worldwide attention.
It was really nice to speak to her and to see how the church was back then, what it went through and how it's evolved.
I'm glad that I had an opportunity to see what happened and the struggles that Blacks had to go through. It makes me so appreciative of opportunities I see now. It has been a struggle, but we must keep going.
Am I proud to be from Alabama? Yes. Am I, do I wish that our state had done differently many, many, many times? Yes.
I just kept going on and on about how I met the guy who helped prosecute the people that did the 16th Street Church bombing. It's just kind of crazy is that we're still in a time period where someone like William Blacksley is still alive, like someone who can vividly recount the events that transpired at that time, and they're still with us today. And he had such a big hand in history, and he still lives to tell the story. He's only but so many years removed from our generation.
Olivia White,
Miss Olivia White.
The person that I will meet is Olivia White, and what I will say to her is thank you, because as a woman, you changed my life.
Many times I have played at mass meetings, and my life would be in danger. There was an occasion when Dr. King had spoken at First African, and I went home and I was trying to just walk through my neighborhood and just kind of, breathe, just kind of let it out. I'm walking down the street, and I heard this noise, like people yelling, and when the closer they got, they was like, there's. And when I turned, there was something hit me in my face. And it was a bag that would hold like 10 pounds of potatoes, and it was full of urine. And the urine hit my face. Because when I yelled, the urine got in my mouth. To me, that was one of the worst things that I ever had to deal with.
Trouble in my way. Trouble in my way. I have to cry sometime.
The knowledge that she shared with us and the information the stories that she shared with us as well really opened my mind to the cruelty of the world and just let me know that anything could be done to anybody, but she still fought and she still persevered.
She reminded me much of my grandmother, and her experiences hit me the hardest emotionally because I could really feel her pain through her words.
You helped me look at things in a different way and understand that life wasn't so easy, but we persevered. So for that, I say thank you.
And finally, Atlanta, Georgia, the resting place of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
If I had the choice to meet someone, I would choose to meet Martin Luther King. And my message to him would be, thank you for having a dream. If it wasn't for him, there's a lot of movements and acts that wouldn't take place. So mainly I would express my appreciation.
From the U.S. Civil Rights Trail back to the Sunshine State, through rain and shine, we soaked it all in.
But I feel like journalists get this all the time.
Most of my conversations existed around what can be done to change what I just saw. With that being said, my emotions after the trip, they were all over the place, but mostly sat in anger because I knew that there was more I can do as a person as well as my peers to discontinue the regurgitated history that doesn't better African Americans.
Not to be desensitized, to really lean into everything that you see and hear and feel.
I just think people really need to get out of their comfort zone and visit these sites because, it's important. If you're an American and you're living in this country, how can you go about your day-to-day without knowing what has happened within the past 100 years? You need to see it firsthand. So that's my advice to everyone. No matter the age, there's sites that are R-rated and there's sites that are PG-rated and G-rated. Children to adult, you all need to see these sites.
This isn't something that you just have to do in school. You don't have to just wait, for a class to come about, to go out and really learn and take in some of this history. This is something that we all should be doing. We should all do our fair share in researching these events and educating each other, really. So keep this history alive and don't let it be forgotten.
Share the knowledge that you learn. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't just capture the moment with your eyes. Speak the words that you see and share the knowledge that you learn with everybody else in the world and your peers and your friends and your family so that this information is not lost.